Hello, Sage. Today we're talking with Professor Emeritus of Chemistry from Spelman College, Professor Al Thompson. Hello, Mr. Thompson. Thank you for joining us on stage.
Thank you, and I'm glad to be here.
I'd like to start off by asking you a few questions, but before I do that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm a graduate of Texas Southern University, both a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, and I finished my doctoral degree in chemistry in 1978 from Howard University. I taught 1 year at Texas Southern, and I stayed at FIS for 2 years, 1 year at Fayetteville State University in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and I moved on to Spelman in 1981 as an assistant professor. I retired from Spelman as a full professor in 2008.
That is wonderful to hear. Now, I'm just going to basically ask you some questions. What exactly is chemistry, and why is it important?
Well, a simple definition is the study of matter and the transformation of matter, changes that it undergoes. But chemistry is in everyday life. You know, you use soap, you cook food, baking soda. CO2 is formed when you use baking soda to make your bread rise. Your body itself is made up of compounds. You can break your body down to simple elements, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and metals, and on and on. So chemistry is a part of your life. It's a part of the world that you live in. The atmosphere. Anything that you can touch, hold in your hand, or see is matter.
You were one of the first chemistry professors at Spelman, is that correct?
I was one of the first African-American males to come into the department. The department started in 1977. It was a small department. There were only 4 people, 2 males and 2 females. The department went to a 5th person in 85. We only taught really the first 2 years. We still relied on Morehouse until the early 90s. The early professors at Spelman actually taught most of the chemistry at Morehouse. There was only really one laboratory there. Now we have a large science center at Spelman. We have graduated an average of 15 or more students per year. When I came to Spelman in 1981, we probably had 3 students who had gotten PhDs in chemistry. When I retired, were about 98, and I'm told now the numbers are around 115 PhDs. So we are in the top numbers nationwide for women, especially African American women, to graduate degrees in chemistry. That's documented by the National Science Foundation.
How has the role of women in chemistry changed since you began your career?
It has changed quite a bit. When I first got to Spelman women are very challenging. And one of the first questions they asked me was, how do you feel about women in science? I think there are no limitations for females, and I always made that clear. I never put any limitations on what my daughters wanted to be in terms of career. My daughter majored in economics at Spelman. She went on to get an MBA. My older daughter, my younger one, majored in computer science. But certainly, Spelman has demonstrated that women can do well in engineering. They can do well in science, in medicine. In fact, my biggest worry now is what has happened to the black males. Most of the black males are going into business, which is not a problem at all, but at the expense of losing those positions that they had over the years in science.
What do you think is the most important discovery in chemistry in the last 50 years?
Well, chemistry has moved from synthesizing materials. Plastics was a big invention, but now chemistry has moved to the bio-type compounds that can be used for treatment, diseases, and things of that nature. The discovery of DNA and modifying the pharmaceuticals and things of that nature. That's probably one of the biggest things that has happened in the past decade. Biomedical research, very challenging.
How do you think artificial intelligence will transform the field of chemistry in the next decade?
You can now use artificial intelligence to make decisions on what route you should take to try to synthesize a compound. I mean, there are thousands of iterations that you can't physically do, as a human in a short period of time. I guess the biggest fear is that it's going to take jobs away. But we have to remember, they said the same thing about the telephone when it came out. They said the same thing about computers. So it's something it's here to stay.
How has your understanding of chemistry influenced your views on the existence or nature of God?
That's, it's a very, very interesting question because it's something I think about all the time. I think about our limitations as humans in terms of this world. I often think about the universe having no boundaries. That's really something that makes you think that there is probably a greater power than what we are. I often think about this world and how much we don't know about this world and how much science is involved in this world.
From your perspective, how important is understanding chemistry for someone who wants to grow their own food?
It's very important that you understand, where you're going to put the garden. What was there prior to that? Was it an industrial site? What grounds are you using? Are you planting a garden on a ground that was contaminated? I grew up in Houston, which is a big industrial city, and I have friends now work with the inner city where they have common gardens, and a lot of toxic metals were in that soil, and it's being uptaken to the plants. Yeah, in that gardening, chemistry is very important. The water that you're using, is it containing some toxins that you don't need? You just had that hurricane and the flooding. Flooding brings on, pushing toxins all over the city and the atmosphere. Are you growing the garden in an atmosphere? Obviously, if it's harmful to the plants, it's going to be harmful to you in terms of your breathing.
Have you had any experiences that has surprised you?
As a chemist, you might set out to synthesize one compound, and you end up getting something else that you don't really recognize. Many discoveries were made by accident. I always tell my students about X-ray. That was an accidental discovery because a person left something in his desk drawer in the laboratory and came back, and there was an image on this film. Eventually, we discovered radiation and X-rays. Always investigate. Never throw something out because it doesn't look like what you want. It may be something that's needed.
Can you describe the chemistry department at Spelman?
It was a small department. There were only 4 people, 2 males and 2 females. There were 2 males that came in 81, and I was one. The department went to a 5th person in 85, still very small. We only taught really the first 2 years. We still relied on Morehouse until the early 90s. Mainly chemistry was taught at Morehouse College. We actually outgrew the Morehouse to accommodate Spelman students because in the late 70s, more females began to go into STEM fields. That's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And so Spelman had to form its own chemistry department.
And how has the chemistry curriculum at Spelman evolved?
So we've added an analytical chemist. We brought a person in who's a laser chemist. The instrumentation has just increased over the years. We went into the new building in 2000. I was part of the fundraising for that building. I wrote a grant to the National Science Foundation and got $2 million to supplement that building because everyone kept telling us, you guys have really done well. And now we have very good facilities. People that visit us from other schools say, oh, you have really excellent facilities. Now they're outgrowing the building, which is a good thing.
What inspired you to join Spelman College as a chemistry professor?
That's an interesting question because when I finished my doctorate, I really wanted to go back to Texas, and there was not an opening there, so I took the position at Fisk, and I did enjoy my time at Fisk, but at the time the school was not very stable financially, so as a young faculty member, I had to leave, and I went to North Carolina. I didn't have to leave, but I left. And I stayed there 1 year, excellent facilities, but culturally, Fayetteville, North Carolina was not for me because everything that I needed to do professionally, I had to go to Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. So there was an opening in Atlanta. I took a summer job in San Antonio, as I mentioned, with the School of Aerospace Medicine. I applied to the job at Spelman and had a nice interview before I went to San Antonio, and I heard from them in July, and I came to Spelman. Growing up as a kid, I always heard good things about Spelman through my parents and friends. I knew Spelman grads, but didn't know much about Spelman in science. You know, Spelman trained a lot of teachers in the early years, nurses or whatever. But when I got here, I realized that there was a commitment to increasing the sciences. And I said, this is an opportunity for me to make a difference working from the start. Dr. Faulkner, Dr. Shirley McVeigh, Arthur Manley, who was the president of Spelman, who really worked to build the sciences at Spelman. And it was a male president when I came to Spelman. He was committed to increasing, especially the number of African American females in science. So the commitment was there, and obviously I've enjoyed it because I stayed 37 years.
What are you most proud of in your career?
It's the success of the students. Although research was a good part of it, but I look back at the number of students who have gone on and had good professional careers. Dr. Bowers and I talk about this all the time. And those students who give back to the college, I mean, you know, $50,000, $100,000, and they can get their companies to match. And we say, well, we take a little responsibility. They did well. They went out and got good jobs, and a few, I think, are millionaires. So, but my wealth, I'm a millionaire in terms of my students. You know, I learned a long time ago, it's not all about money. There's so many other rewards that you get, you know, especially when the students. In fact, I had a Morehouse student that came down after class one day and said to me, "You really like this stuff." I was just put aback that he said that. Then I realized I was showing to them how excited I was to teach chemistry.
Can you share a memorable moment from your teaching career?
There's so many. I would say just recognizing how students grow over the 4 years and graduate and accepted to many graduate schools, many medical schools, have taken leadership roles. It's been very rewarding just to think about the students that you have touched. And I'm still in contact with them. I've taught many students who have gone on to medical school, and some are surgeons now. I just know that I have students that text me all the time, "I'm going to be in Atlanta. Can we have lunch together?" You know, it's been a very, very good experience.
What advice do you have for new chemists?
Find a good mentor. I had mentors along the way. Make sure you have a good mentor, someone who can guide you, follow you throughout your career. My mentors, even as a professor, I would call them and ask questions. What should I do when I'm trying to make a decision? That's one advice I give to them. And have a variety of mentors. If you're in academics, have someone in academics and industry, you know. And I've always worked with non-scientists, especially in writing. I tell young people, take your writing very seriously, because that's something you have to do as a scientist. You have to communicate. Be on those boards and those committees that select who comes into medical school. So, you know, be at the front end. That's very, very important that you're at the table where decisions are being made.
Is there anyone that you would like to acknowledge?
A former colleague who retired after I did 1 year after, Dr. Fred Bowers. He's in mathematics. In fact, we talk to each other almost every other day, certainly about science. And Dr. Ella Faulkner, who was a mentor to me as a young faculty member, who involved me in the grant writing. We were out getting money to do some of the things that we wanted to do. You know, colleges can't always fund what you want to do, so you go out to other agencies and you build a reputation for writing good grant proposals, doing good things, and you can get more money. So Dr. Faulkner was certainly the mentor to many of the younger faculty members. She was a mathematics professor.
Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, nothing, but if there are any follow-up questions,
Sure.
You can certainly email it to me. Individuals can. You can certainly give them my email, and I will try to answer or lead them to answers.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I love questions because that's challenging. That means that I need to go out and learn more.
And what are you doing now?
I'm writing a book on the history of chemistry at Spelman. I'm writing an article on one of my Howard professors. I'm writing a book on my mother's family. And when I finish that, I'm going to write a book on my dad's family.
Isn't there another book that you have?
Oh, yes, about the black chemists, National Organization of Black Chemists and Chemical Engineers. I'm working on the revision with Dr. Regina Williams, who is not a chemist, but who worked at Oak Ridge as a writer. And so we did an initial book that we had at our national meeting, and we only printed 100 copies and sold out of it. So we are in the process of beginning to do a revision.
Thank you, Professor Al Thompson, for coming on to stage.
It's been my pleasure, and tell the audience I look forward to getting questions from them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Professor Al Thompson.